IKEA is the world's largest furniture retailer. It operates more than 400 stores in over 60 countries. It serves roughly 800 million customers a year. Its annual revenue exceeds $40 billion. Nobody owns it. Not exactly. There are no shareholders who could sell their stake. There is no founder's family that controls the company in any straightforward legal sense. There is no stock market listing where you could buy a piece of it. The entity that sits at the top of IKEA's corporate structure is a Dutch foundation, a legal entity that, in the most technical sense, owns itself. The man who built IKEA spent 4 decades living in tax exile in Switzerland, publicly celebrated frugality as a personal philosophy, and in 1982 gave away his entire company to a charitable foundation whose stated purpose was the promotion of innovation in the field of architectural and interior design. That foundation became, by some estimates, the world's wealthiest charitable foundation. For years, it donated roughly 1 million euros annually to a Swedish design institute, while sitting on assets worth tens of billions of euros. The structure Ingvar Kamprad built was entirely legal. It was also one of the most carefully engineered corporate arrangements in modern business history. And understanding it requires understanding one man's relationship with 3 things: furniture, frugality, and taxes. Everyone knows the furniture. Almost nobody knows the taxes. Ingvar Kamprad was born in 1926 on a farm in Småland, a region in southern Sweden known historically for its poor soil and its inhabitants' reputation for stubbornness and thrift. He founded IKEA in 1943 at the age of 17, initially selling matches, pens, and picture frames by mail order. The name was an acronym: I for Ingvar, K for Kamprad, E for Elmtarid, the name of his family farm, and A for Agunnarid, his home village. Furniture came later, added to the catalog in 1948. The insight that would define IKEA came in 1956, when a designer named Gillis Lundgren, trying to fit a table into a car, removed its legs and laid it flat. The flat pack concept, furniture shipped disassembled, assembled by the customer, solved the fundamental problem of furniture retail: the cost of transporting and storing bulky assembled items. It allowed IKEA to sell furniture at prices far below its competitors and to scale a retail model that would eventually span the globe. By the 1970s, IKEA was a significant Swedish business. Kamprad had become one of Sweden's wealthiest men, and Sweden in the 1970s had one of the highest income and inheritance tax rates in the world. In 1973, Kamprad moved to Denmark. In 1976, he moved to Switzerland, where he would remain for 40 years. He was not the only wealthy Swede to leave during this period. Sweden's progressive tax system had become, for the very wealthy, extremely expensive. But Kamprad's departure was particularly notable, because IKEA was not just a company. It was a Swedish institution, and its founder had just moved to a country with more favorable tax treatment. The corporate structure that Kamprad created around IKEA was not assembled overnight. It was built deliberately over years, with the assistance of lawyers from multiple countries, and it was designed to achieve several goals simultaneously: to minimize tax liability, to prevent any hostile takeover of the company, to ensure IKEA's continued independence after Kamprad's death, and, at least nominally, to serve a charitable purpose. The foundation of the structure, in every sense, was a decision made in 1982. Kamprad transferred his ownership of the IKEA group to a newly created Dutch foundation called Stichting Inca Foundation. The Netherlands was chosen deliberately. A team of lawyers from Switzerland, Denmark, Sweden, France, and England examined multiple jurisdictions before selecting the Dutch foundation structure, which offered some of the oldest and most stable foundation legislation in the world. And critically, foundations in the Netherlands were not legally required to publish their accounts. The Stichting Inca Foundation was established with a stated charitable purpose: the promotion of innovation in the field of architectural and interior design. This purpose was real, but modest. The foundation was required under Dutch law to dedicate its assets to this purpose, which meant they could not be distributed to the Kamprad family as dividends or profits. But dedicate its assets could mean many things, including reinvesting them in the IKEA business itself. What Kamprad had created was an entity that owned one of the world's most profitable retail operations, was classified as a charitable foundation, and was not required to distribute its wealth to anyone, including to actual charitable causes. For years, the foundation's annual giving to external charitable projects was minimal relative to the scale of assets it controlled. To understand IKEA's corporate structure, you have to understand that what most people think of as IKEA is actually two separate businesses that operate under the same brand but are owned by different entities. The first half is the retail operation, the stores, the warehouses, the supply chain. This is operated by Inca Group, which is ultimately owned by the Stichting Inca Foundation. Inca Group is the world's largest IKEA franchisee. It runs the majority of IKEA stores globally and generates most of IKEA's revenue. The second half is the brand itself, the IKEA name, the trademark, the concept, the right to use the distinctive IKEA system. This is owned by Inter IKEA Systems BV, a company registered in the Netherlands. Inter IKEA licenses the IKEA concept to all IKEA franchisees, including Inca Group, in exchange for a royalty fee of approximately 3% of sales. Every IKEA store in the world pays this fee to Inter IKEA Systems for the right to use the IKEA name and concept. Inter IKEA Systems is itself part of a separate corporate structure, ultimately controlled by the Interogo Foundation, based in Liechtenstein. The Interogo Foundation remained under the influence of the Kamprad family. The effect of this structure was elegant in its simplicity. The retail business, owned by the charitable foundation, generated large revenues. A significant portion of those revenues flowed as royalty payments to the brand-owning entity, which remained under the influence of the Kamprad family. The charitable foundation owned the stores but paid a constant stream of fees to the family's vehicle for owning the brand. When asked about this arrangement, Kamprad was characteristically direct. Tax efficiency, he said, was a natural part of the company's low-cost culture. The same frugality that meant counting the meatballs on the plate in the IKEA cafeteria applied, in his view, to the tax bill of the company he had built. In 2006, The Economist published an analysis of the Stichting Inca Foundation that attracted significant attention. By the magazine's estimation, the foundation controlled assets worth approximately 36 billion euros, making it, at that point, the world's wealthiest charitable foundation, larger than the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The Economist's analysis also noted what the foundation was doing with those assets. In the year examined, it had donated approximately 1 million euros to a Swedish design institute. 1 million euros from a foundation with tens of billions in assets. The characterization of the Stichting Inca Foundation as the world's wealthiest charitable foundation was technically accurate. What it implied about the charitable mission being fulfilled was considerably more complicated. Kamprad responded to the criticism. The foundation's charitable mandate was gradually expanded. In 2009, its charter was broadened to include support for vulnerable children, and the IKEA Foundation's actual charitable giving increased substantially in subsequent years. By 2022, the IKEA Foundation was distributing hundreds of millions of euros annually to genuine charitable causes. But the structure itself remained. The charitable foundation still owned the retail operation. The royalty payments still flowed. The family retained effective influence without formal ownership. And the fundamental question, whether the arrangement was primarily a corporate structure dressed in charitable clothing or a genuine charitable institution that happened to own a retail business, remained, depending on who you asked, entirely unresolved. Ingvar Kamprad returned to Sweden in 2014, 40 years after his departure. Swedish tax rates had changed substantially during those 4 decades, and the decision to return was partly, though not entirely, financial. He died in Småland in January 2018, in the region where he had been born, at the age of 91. His personal habits remained consistent to the end. He drove an old Volvo. He flew economy class. He was reported to take advantage of early bird specials at restaurants. He bought his clothes at flea markets. He was, in his personal life, genuinely frugal, in the way that a man raised on a farm in Småland in the 1930s might remain frugal regardless of how much money he eventually accumulated. Whether his frugality and his tax arrangements were consistent or contradictory depended on how you looked at them. Kamprad argued they were the same thing, that keeping money within IKEA, rather than distributing it to governments and taxes, served the company's long-term interests and therefore its employees and customers. Critics argued that a man who publicly celebrated penny pinching while constructing one of Europe's most elaborate tax avoidance structures was at minimum applying his principles selectively. The IKEA structure reveals something that goes beyond one company's tax arrangements. It reveals how the boundary between legal and legitimate can be drawn in very different places, depending on who is drawing it. Everything about the Stichting Inca Foundation structure was legal. The Dutch foundation law that enabled it was real law, properly applied. The charitable purpose was genuine, eventually, substantially so. The protection it offered against hostile takeover meant that IKEA remained independent and long-term oriented in a way that publicly listed companies often cannot be. But the structure was also designed from the beginning to minimize tax payments to the governments of the countries where IKEA operated. Countries whose infrastructure, education systems, and legal frameworks made IKEA's global retail operation possible. The royalty payment mechanism that channeled revenue from the charitable foundation to the family's brand-owning vehicle was not an accidental feature of the structure, it was engineered. Kamprad was not unusual in doing this. Dozens of multinational companies have used similar mechanisms: foundation ownership, royalty payments through low-tax jurisdictions, franchise structures that separate the brand from the operations to minimize their tax exposure. What made IKEA distinctive was the combination: the genuine charitable framing, the extraordinary scale, the personal frugality narrative, and the complexity of the arrangement sitting underneath it. The world's largest furniture retailer is owned by a charitable foundation. The charity's founder drove an old Volvo and flew economy class. The structure that owns the company was designed by lawyers from 5 countries with tax efficiency among its principal objectives. All of these things are true simultaneously. Understanding how they fit together is understanding something important about how large companies actually work, and about how the words we use to describe them can obscure as much as they reveal. IKEA's blue and yellow stores sell the idea that good design should be affordable, that ordinary people deserve well-made things, that the same quality available to the wealthy should be available to everyone, if you're willing to assemble it yourself. Ingvar Kamprad believed this genuinely. The furniture philosophy and the tax philosophy both came from the same place: the conviction that waste was wrong, that efficiency was virtue, and that money kept within the system served better than money given away. The Stichting Inca Foundation still sits at the top of the corporate structure. It still owns the stores. It now gives substantially to genuine charitable causes. The royalties still flow. The family still has effective influence without formal ownership. Nobody owns IKEA, or rather, a Dutch foundation that legally owns itself owns a holding company that operates the stores, while a separate family-controlled structure in Liechtenstein owns the brand and collects the fees, which amounts more or less to the same thing.